Welcome to Girl Talk with your host, Melissa Ann. Girl Talk is that show which discusses the real issues Black women face being a mom, a dad, a wife, a girlfriend, a sister, a co-worker, a therapist, or whatever hat Black women wear on any particular day. Why? Because Black women are just dope. Without further ado, here is your host, Melissa Ann.
So I was sexually molested starting from the age of 3 until I was about 15. Not by the same person. It started being one person and then it changed just when I thought I finally escaped and gotten out of that. Then it was someone else. And no one ever knew because how I hid that or what happened was I became an overachiever, right? Straight A student, top of my class, involved in every single thing. Very active in just extracurricular activities, church, home, wherever there was something to be done, I did it. And so what I learned was that I masked the feeling. I didn't deal with the trauma. Actually, I was so young, I couldn't even process the trauma, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But when I was older and understood the trauma that had happened, I masked it by being an overachiever and trying to define my worth in the things that I did. And so I never dealt with it.
You know, you're talking about a molestation, and I too am a product of molestation as a kid. And so many women, I can tell you, you can talk to a plethora of women and they will say the same thing. They've had some instance of molestation, and then some handle it differently and some handle it like you and I step over it. I told my mom initially, and I don't, know why she brought me back to the environment, maybe because she had to work. But once that happened, I never again spoke about it until I was 33 years old. So why do you think it took you so long to expose it?
Two things for me. First of all, like I said, it started when I was so young that I didn't even know how to process it, right? And the very first incident, when it happened, I was looking for my friend. And I think I never exposed it for two reasons. The person threatened the person that I loved the most, which was my mom. Like, they threatened to kill my mom if I spoke up. Of course, hindsight is, of course that wouldn't happen, right? But again, you're talking about the mind of a 3-year-old. And then the other reason that I don't think I ever said anything was because I was looking for a friend and I was out of place. And as a result, when I went home, I got in trouble for being out of place. So then I just kind of internalized it for as much as the 3-year-old mind can. And I just kept it quiet and tried to avoid the situation when possible. Unfortunately, there were many times when I couldn't, because kind of to your story too, Melissa, it was the place that I would go when I came home from school.
Right. And you're kind of stuck and you don't know, you don't know what to feel, Yeah. Or, you just don't know what to feel. And I think so many women have carried this burden and what we call emotional baggage. That's another rock we have in our bag, in our backpack, that we press down and then we move on to the next thing. Even based upon your personality and how you treat people, that you went through those things. And it goes back to how strong we as Black women think we have to be. And so we overcompensate for that, step over that stuff and keep it moving. Throw the rock in the backpack and keep it moving.
And keep it moving.
Why do you think we do that?
I think society somewhat mandates it. So something that I noticed, and I think this will answer your question. Unfortunately, I'm going to go around my elbow to get there. But Tiffany mentioned something in her story, which again, Melissa, we've heard it before, and it hit me different hearing it tonight. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that she said was she knew she had to take care of their daughter when she found out that her daughter's father had passed. She said, I knew I had to take care of our daughter. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was I wanted to protect something outside of me as well, namely my mom, because that's who the person had threatened. So what I noticed is we tend to find strength outside of ourselves to push us to keep going, something that we value even more than ourselves. And so we just push and we push. And part of that, I think, is because me personally, I'll speak for me, is I didn't want to let my mom, my parents down. So I did what I had to do to be what I thought I needed to be in their eyes. Right. Now, as an adult and having now shared this, I know that I could have handled it differently, and it wouldn't have changed how they saw me or felt about me. But at the time, that wasn't how I understood it, how I processed it. So the lesson that I took from it with being a mom now is that I make it a point to say to my children all the time, it doesn't matter what you go through, what you experience, what you do, what you don't do, what someone else does. I'm here for you and I love you, and nothing will change how I feel about you. Right.
And you know what is deep is that, you know, we've all been single moms. We've had stints as single moms, and our children have come first, regardless of how we're feeling, whether we want to wake up in the morning. And if you're anything like me, that emotional baggage, like you said, Tiffany, starts to weigh on you so hard that you just want to give up. You know, the line that, even though I wrote it, the line that stands out to me the most is, I've rushed happiness and forgot to live inside my own. What does that mean to you when you think about emotional baggage?
For me personally, gosh, that sums up my life so well. Rushing happiness for me personally is not enjoying the journey, but rushing to get to a particular destination. Mm-hmm. And so what I mean by that, like growing up, we took lots of trips, right? Because my mom is from a really big family. And so we would take trips to visit her sisters or brothers all over the country. And now that I'm older, I realize that a lot of the fun of those trips was the actual trip. Right. Just as much as getting to the destination. Now bring that back to being an adult or just living life. I found myself not so much enjoying where I was or what I was, but just constantly trying to get to the next thing, right? So, okay, great. I'm here. I've accomplished this. What's next? I'm here. I'm trying to accomplish this. What's next? How do I get there? What's the fastest way? Instead of taking a moment to actually enjoy where I am, where is my happiness? What am I feeling? What am I doing? But really just living outside of the feelings, but being driven to something else, looking for that thing to fulfill me when the fulfillment would come from within myself.
Right. We look for so many things to fulfill us, right? We look for men. We look for our kids. We live vicariously through our kids.
Yep. Even work.
Work, yeah.
Yeah, lots of things.
Well, I had to be told, you know, via seeking therapy, like, when do you focus on yourself? You focus on everybody else, but when do you focus on Melissa?
And I still struggle with that.
Yeah, that's right. Because even like for me growing up, watching my grandmother hold it down, like completely hold it down. But when I, becoming an adult and having the opportunity to just have so many conversations with her, and she would tell me, take care of you. Take care of you, Tiff. And just, recently over these past couple of years, as I've done so much soul searching for myself, I understand what she meant by that. You guys, like we take care of everybody else except ourselves. And we can't even be effective mothers, an effective wife, an effective daughter, friend, if we're not okay, right? No. We have to take care of ourselves before we take care of anybody else. And I used to think that was selfish. No, that's self-love. Right. That is called self-love. And that's, for me, I wasn't taught that because I watched my grandmother, even my mom, always put me first, always put the family first. And now I am okay with making sure that I take care of myself. first so that I then can be the best mom, the best wife, the best daughter, the best friend that I can be. But if Tiff's not okay, it's just going to have a trickle down effect. And that's not fair to myself or the people that I love.
Well, it's so funny. When I first started the movement, No More Boyfriends, I swear it was like I was saying the Antichrist to women. They would be like, wait a minute, because I want a man, I want a boyfriend, I want something.
Right.
And they kept feeling like that I was speaking about not having relationships. And actually, that's quite the opposite. I was actually speaking about not getting to titles when it comes to getting the relationship you want. So a lot of times women, when we say we have a boyfriend, we have a tendency to substitute that word for husband or even fiance. And so we'll start treating this boyfriend in a manner like a husband. We start giving him things that he hasn't earned, that he doesn't deserve. And we also become a placeholder when we take on that title, because we start taking care of this man as if he's our own without him having any requirements that's needed to be my husband or my significant other. And so we'll get into this title and we'll start making a man, we'll say he's our boyfriend, and we'll strictly start treating him like he's a husband. We start giving him certain assets that we have. We start giving him certain resources that we have. We start giving him parts of our self that he has not earned. We give him vulnerable spaces that he has not earned. We pretty much turn over ourselves to him as if he was our husband. And then we get upset or we get mad or we get very disappointed when this very person that we've given all of our wifely assets to turns around, not gives the same thing back to us, and then turns around and goes, leave the relationship. A lot of times he may leave and go marry somebody else. And you're like, I did everything for this person. And you didn't realize that you gave him all the wifely assets without realizing the things that he actually needed to make you a wife.
Well, let's double click on that, because like when you're growing up, the first thing you're taught is make sure you treating your man the right way. Make sure you cooking and cleaning and feeding him. A way to the man's heart is through his belly. So you're doing all of these things, but are you saying that in reality, you're just kind of hurting the relationship? Or is there certain points where you should do this, start doing this? Or let's double click on that a little bit.
Okay, so just what you said treat my man, not this boyfriend. And in that aspect, when we say my man, we should be talking about somebody who has committed to the same level that we have committed to them. Too many times we feel like that we have to prove ourselves to be a wife, which means we feel like we got to cook. We've got to give him all these things. We've got to give him our body. We've got to show him that we are a wife, instead of remembering that we were created to be a wife. So there's nothing that we have to prove to this man. All the things you could do, quote unquote, as a wife will not keep this man. A man decides if he wants to be with you if you have the qualities that he's looking for in a woman, as a person, as a character, in the morals, in the way that he's thinking. And so if you give all these things to him, cook, clean, show him what you can do, that's not going to keep him. That's not going to make him stay. And you have to understand again, you are already a wife. God created you to be a wife. So you have nothing to prove. The only thing you're doing when you're dating a man is to see if you guys have the same qualities, if you have the same things in common, if you're compatible, to see if you want to go to the next level. You are already a wife. So you don't have to prove anything to him. There's nothing to prove. So doing all those things will not make him stay. So at the end of the day, you really have to stop and start working with yourself first and understanding who you are first. And that's one of the first things I talk about in our coaching sessions when you're ready for me to connect you with someone is you need to discover who you are. Too many times we put our self-worth on what somebody else thinks about us instead of what we already know us to be. So you go back out there again, tap dancing, moonwalking, doing everything it is to do to show this man that you're great and not realizing how great you are. The one thing we have to understand as women is we are the prize, no matter how society tries to put it out there, no matter how many hurt and broken men, because it's always those hurt, broken, disappointed men who have self-esteem issues, who put out there that I need you to show me who you are. When a real man, or let me not say that because they hate when I say that, a man who knows who he is does not require you to do all that performing. He will look at you or he will talk to you and he will figure out if you fit what he's looking for. And if you don't understand, he's not staying. Now, here's the kicker. He will play, but he will not stay. And that's the one thing we have to understand. A man will use and do and take advantage of any asset that you will allow him to, if you allow him to. And that's where your accountability as a woman comes into play. If you're not getting the things you need and you don't see that it's going anywhere, don't start questioning that man like, why you don't do this and why you don't love me and why am I not the fit for you? Don't do all that. Just not the point. What you need to understand is you're not getting what you need. And you can have a discussion with them because that's what grown people do. Hey, I realize that we're not moving in the way that I'm feeling comfortable or I'm not getting my needs met. So I would like to, let's have that conversation. Once you give the person the conversation and you give them the information, they have two choices. They can either see that bothers you and change, or just keep going as they are going. And that means they have no concern about you or how your needs need to be met. So that's up to you at that point to make a decision.
What are some things that women can do to fulfill themselves so they don't feel loneliness?
Okay, so the difference between being alone, right, is the first thing when you're alone is exactly what you said. You have no one. You have nothing. You have no one. There's nothing around, nobody around. And that has a sense of making you feel like you're by yourself, right? You feel by yourself. You feel like nobody's around. But when you start to feel lonely, and it's actually meaning nobody's around, but when you're feeling lonely, you're feeling like there's nobody to feel something, to give you a feeling of something. When you're lonely, it's like nobody's here to. When you start talking about being lonely, you start talking about feelings, not the absence of someone, but the absence of a feeling. And so you start needing something to fulfill a feeling that you don't have. And so you start thinking, if I could just get someone in this space, and a lot of times it's not someone, it could be something or some activity, right, or some purpose. And so we have to understand, if you don't find, again, I can never stress enough, if you don't find happiness within yourself, adding someone is not going to help. So you have to start looking to see what your passions are, what your purpose is, who you are, what defines you, what other things outside of people make you happy. It has to be some other things outside of people that make you happy. And normally that's a purpose or a passion. When you find your purpose or your passion and you get involved with your purpose or your passion, you will start to find those people fall in place because they're fitting your purpose and your passion. So you have to start with those things first.
And that's a word right there, because a lot of times we don't know what our purpose or passion is. We don't take time to figure it out because why? Because we wrapped up into some dude that ain't wrapped up into us. And so
we're so busy trying to find somebody to fill that space instead of filling it ourselves with the things that actually have to be filled first before we even find somebody.
Right.
You have to be filled first. You definitely have to be filled first.
And when you say fill, what do you mean?
Again, your purpose or your passion. You have to be whole. You have to be okay with being with you. We think, I have nobody to take me out to eat, or I have nobody to go bowl, or I have nobody to do activities with. And there's so many people out there that you can do those things with. You can join groups. You can go out. I'm a person, I'll go to a bar by myself in a heartbeat. I'll go sit at the bar. Everybody's not like me. So I'll try not to make it be that simple, but I don't have problem with meeting people. But for people who do, start with groups that have the same purposes and passions that you do. Like if you play softball, there's a group for somebody that has softball. If you love museums, there's meetup groups for that. If you love the arts, there's meetup groups for that. And that way you'll be in places that you can meet people who have the same interests as you. But let me say this too. Finding companionship is an activity. It is not something that's going to come to your house, and it's not something that's going to fall up on your woe is me attitude. You have to understand that anything that you're intentional about, anything that you want, you do it for your career, you do it for when you're shopping for your car, you're doing it for when anything that you want to have, you're intentional about going out and doing the work to get those things. When you want weight loss, whatever it is, you're intentional about doing that. So if you want companionship, if you want a relationship, if you want a significant other, you have to be just as intentional in doing the same thing, which means the very first thing, finding out who you are and what you want, and then putting yourself out there in situations to find those connections with those people, and not being disappointed or messed up when the very first one you meet or second or third does not work. You get up, you dust it off, and you try again.
And so I invited Tiffany to the stage with me today to talk about her experience of losing her mom. So without further ado, I'd love for you to introduce yourself, Tiff, to the audience.
I am a wife, a mom, a daughter, a sister. I have 3 brothers. I'm one of 4. I'm the only girl, which I think helped molded my personality quite a bit. I was born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee. I currently work in the financial services technology industry, and I'm just looking forward to our conversation today.
Very nice. I'm excited to have the conversation. So listen, we're just going to dig right on in and hit it at the head, right? You have, like I have lost your mom. Your mom was your best friend. So, tell me a little bit about, what happened, the story behind it, and what your experience has been since kind of getting over the hump of losing your mom.
That's an excellent question. It's a full question, so I'll do my best to go over the history. But my parents divorced when I was around 12 or 13, and my mom actually divorced my dad, and the 4 of us remained with my dad. So we had a troubled relationship as I entered adulthood. There were years that we did not speak. I can say from a teenage mind that I lost respect in some ways because I didn't understand why, if I was the only girl, I wasn't privileged enough to choose to go with her. I didn't understand her reasoning for doing it. And even through college, we had some difficulties in establishing a relationship, let alone a friendship, because I mostly did not agree. And I didn't think she understood how she impacted my childhood. The turn of events for that was when she remarried. She made a concerted effort to include her children, but we were still very bitter. I was not the only one where we did not talk to her, did not associate with her. We did not do holidays. Oh. We basically declined any sort of interaction with her. But as she continued to make those efforts, I would say the first major lesson in young adulthood that my mom taught me was forgiveness. And the way that I was able to do that was because she let me know that she forgave herself for the reasons for her choices. She explained to me what her choices were, and she gave me the opportunity to ask the challenging questions and express how I feel. And we were able to move on from there. So early 20s, we're reestablishing our relationship. I had moved from Tennessee, where I'm from, and she started to make trips down to see me. She just took the initiative to be a part of my life. And I had a mentor that I had adopted as my godmother. And she was there for me in times when my mom could not be, either because I didn't allow her to be or I didn't want her to be. So fast forward, I started to understand that my mom had some health challenges. I understood that as I learned more about her and her dynamic and relationship with her mom, and the reason it was the way that it was, I started to understand a little bit more why it was challenging for her to be the type of mother that I thought she should be. And I didn't want to resent her. So I first established a relationship between my godmother and my mom because they were equally as important to me in helping mold so that I did not fall through some of the cracks of society. So as I got closer to my mom, we became best friends. If you saw me, you saw her, you've been around her.
Right.
You know, we had social hours, and we started to do something called a listen and learn, where we would gather Black, women of all ages and generations and just have these discussions and make it fun. I didn't take her to the club with me, but I could have. And it was a fine line between her trying to be my friend and be my mom. And we had established that. Well, as some of her health issues start to be a little bit more, of a challenge for her life, because it was hypertension. I'll gladly share that, because heart disease does affect the Black community in many ways, and we don't acknowledge and address that. And seeing some things happen before my eyes and not realizing that the what I thought would be long-term effect ended up being short-term, I started to help her rehabilitate through some of the procedures and things that she had to have. And then, I decided to get married, and I left Tennessee again, and I moved with my husband, and 6 months later she passed after my wedding. Mm-hmm. And even in that, there were some very significant things that in hindsight, I realized that she was preparing for. Maybe I didn't get it right in your childhood, but I want to get it right from now on, whatever that looked like. So we had some in-depth discussions that'll probably come up in our conversation today, but ultimately it was a sudden passing that I realized I was prepared for without even knowing. It's been 8 years. It'll be 8 years, May 14th. And she actually did pass just one day after Mother's Day, technically. So Mother's Day is always a reminder of that time and that situation. So
even though people are telling you you're not going to get over it, and I think in my circle, it didn't happen to them. Like, people had their mothers, so they didn't know what it felt like. Even now, people that have lost their mom will say, man, I didn't realize what you were going through. So when you look, man, I went through this with my mom. What was that? It hits different. How did it hit you different?
So in the loss of my mom, I had a high school friend. I'll call her a friend now. We were not friends in high school. And, when we posted on social media about my mom's passing, me along with my brothers, we did it as a unit. So he posted the same messaging at the same time. And so someone had reached out to me and said, I know exactly what you're about to go through, and I just want to be there. And to my surprise, during the wake, I looked up and she sat next to me. And she knows who she is. I'll say her first name is a J. And she said, I just wanted to do this for you because someone did this for me, and it made all the difference in the world. And so my moment of was having someone to care enough to relate, but not feel like they could tell me how to grieve and how to get through it. Mm-hmm. And then I also saw a post on social media that talks about how you become a member of this club that you did not sign up for. After you lose a mom and you see someone else lose their mom, your heart drops a little bit.
Yes,
and you immediately can relate to something that you never really wish you could relate to. And so, you try to find a way to really just be there for others, regardless of how close you were. I had close friends and family all around, but it was just the presence of this individual at that time that made me understand that I was about to start a journey, and I didn't know where it was going to take me. I did not know how I was going to do it. I was the only girl, so I had to do the viewing, and I had to look at her hair, and I had to, be in a position where I didn't think I would be. And her mom is still living. And so, you become supportive of that as well. And you try to grieve in the way that you do. So it can be something that can definitely mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, I will add spiritually, make you question so many things about how you arrived at that point. So I more so try to process it in what is the moment now. When I had my son, I just completely bawled, and they were like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I was like, I just want my mom. And in that moment, that wasn't something that I could get. So I had to try to make the best of that moment because of her, because he was her wish. And so I started to have the thoughts of, well, this is what she wanted. And, just remind myself that we had established things before that day came. And I felt a little bit more calmness in the soothing of her presence just by remembering those things. So that's what has helped me.
So I always say that I'm here if you need me, if just to listen. And do you find that you had someone just to listen?
Yeah, ironically, after marrying and being in a city where I didn't have things to pull me out of that grieving, which was depression for me. So I'm newly married. My husband had some time with my mom, but not enough to understand and even witness the dynamics of our relationship to understand the weight of this loss. And he was on assignment through work to be out of the country. And so not only did I lose my mom, I'm in a new city. I have no favorite nail shop to go to. I have no psychologist to go to. I have no church to go to. I literally was in something that was brand new. And so that was the thing that was really close to taking me over the edge. And so what I would do, where he was, the country was about 9 hours ahead. And I would call him and just cry. I actually didn't want to talk. I actually didn't want him to say anything. I just needed to be able to cry because she was the person that I would normally do that with. Mm-hmm. And so the biggest struggle for somebody that I talked to every single day of my life, and at the time that she had become ill before we discovered where she was after her passing, there was a 24-hour period where I knew, because I couldn't get in touch with her, that something was terribly wrong. And so I had to start writing a journal so that I could talk to her. And I didn't revisit the pages because you don't record a conversation to go back to it. So I didn't. And I had to do that for some months just to allow myself the stability to speak on it, because I knew that no one else's story was like mine. Like, you can relate, but you don't understand. You know, I had some sense of guilt for leaving and moving and going on with my life, even though I was in my mid-30s, and the what ifs. Especially with it being Mother's Day weekend. It was the first Mother's Day that I physically missed. I had come the week before. But then I had to turn that into, that week before was one-on-one time because it wasn't Mother's Day weekend. So we weren't dealing with the hustle and bustle and what's expected. We really spent some quality time without me knowing that would be the last time.
Wow. You know, it's funny because what you're talking about are the stages of mourning, right? The guilt, the pieces, the what ifs, all of those things are the stages that you're supposed to move through in your mourning as you mourn your mom. I think, you know, God is amazing in what he does, because, you know, you were able to spend that hearty quality time right before her passing, not knowing that it was going to be the last. And were there any signs, do you think, you know, prior to her passing away that, she was really, really sick, or was it just totally?
Absolutely. I knew that she had in hindsight, let's be clear. In the time I was processing it. I was loving on my mom. I was there. I was traveling back and forth. I was trying to make sure that she didn't feel that I went and got married and forgot all about her, because I was her caregiver in so many ways with the illnesses and rehabilitation and other things that she had to do that I supported her with when I had moved back to Nashville. And there were a couple of conversations. And so this is a very important part where, for those who do still have their mom, you listen and you become aware, because those are the nuggets and the pieces of gold that help you go on after the fact. And so there were lots of things that she would talk to me about. She would tell me how she wanted to be buried. And usually our instinct is, oh, Mom, I don't want to talk about that. Just put it in paper, but I was solid in any decisions that we needed to make for her, because she had made that clear. She had started to talk about a change in career because the flying was impacting just the stability that she needed with the hypertension issues. And she had said for a while, I'm not stopping traveling. I love to travel. I'm not going to stop. So to hear her say, I think I know what I'm going to do when I get off the road, that was another indicator that she had been given some news that some things needed to turn around quickly. And then there were just really, we were close. So there were other things that she would say that I would know, but I felt it was more of my role to console her and let her know everything's going to be okay. Just make sure you go to the appointment, make sure you take your medicine, and just really trying to go through the routine. But in hindsight, and in realization of that, because hypertension can be genetic, she was a teacher. She was teaching me things to look out for and to be aware and to know about. My mom went through that. When you go fill out that history chart at the doctor, if I have an opportunity to know that information, I need to share it. And in a lot of ways, during that time, it has helped mold the type of mom that I think I should be. Because originally, remember, me and my mom had a challenged relationship in the beginning. So what I could tell you are all the things I wasn't going to do. I'm not going to be that parent. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be that way. But in her loss and trying to make peace of it and find the positive, it has taught me the things that I should do. And that's create those memories, to pause in the moment. Don't make it about a holiday, do things before, communicate, be understanding. And so there's just so many things that were wrapped up into that situation that still helps me as an individual today.
What are some of the things that you can offer to them and, to cope, to get onto the other side where you're not mourning as much? You're never, ever, ever going to stop. I think about my mother every single day. But when it used to be when I said her name, I would start crying. But I'm able to talk about her now without the emotion. So how do you get to the other side?
So I'm a little different. Our community has a way as Black women that you are to be strong. You can cry, but you don't cry for too long. Or she's at peace now. She's better where she is. And we have all these sort of cliche things that we do that's supposed to help you grieve. And I'm a little different in the fact that I don't choose to use those things in remembrance of her. So for Mother's Day, I don't try to decide how I'm going to feel before it gets here. Or her birthday, I don't try to decide, because I will get up and be like, I'm just not going to get on social media and I'm not going to do this, because you get the memories. And then if it's Mother's Day, everybody's out with their mom, and it triggers a lot of emotions that don't allow you to get in front of being okay with how you feel. So one of the things, I don't think there is an other side for me. I don't think I will ever get over losing her. I don't think it will ever get better, but I know in some ways I've made progress, because so far I'm able to have this conversation with you without the emotional and total breakdown that I just experienced February 25th, 2021, which is her birthday. And I got up and I thought this year would be different, and it wasn't. I cried harder than I did the last year. So I allow myself to feel in that moment, because that's what it was. When I was standing over her for the last time, that was a moment. When I remember her turning around at the airport and waving at me and smiling, that was a moment. It was a different kind of smile and memory. And so for those things, what I do is try not to get involved in how you should feel or what you should do, and there's nothing wrong for those who do things in memory of their parents. Like if you go to their gravesite every year for those occasions, I don't see anything wrong with that. But for me, I'm just like, but what if I don't want to do that? Or what if that is a trigger? Let me feel okay with doing that. And so, I tell the stories, I tell the happy times, and I say often in my posts, make new memories, because the memories I'm making now is based on memories that I had with her. My son will know who she is. He will never get the opportunity to meet her in the flesh, but he will know who she is when he sees her picture, and he will know, my soon-to-be daughter who's arriving. My mom's name is Marianne, and her name is Mariana. There's a story behind where that comes from. It's a part of her name. It's not her first name. So for me, I really just continue to build on what I had. Instead of considering it to be a loss, I consider it to be a point of view where my journey changed.
You coined a phrase, get your carry-on on. And I think that is so amazing. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that means?
Absolutely. So basically it comes from the analogy of how we deal with our emotions. So our emotions don't disappear. Like we pretend like we can put them, down somewhere and throw them to the side or whatever, but they don't. We carry them with us everywhere we go. So I started this analogy when I was talking to clients and other people. I started this analogy where you get on a plane. You want to get on a plane, and essentially you are only allowed to carry on your little carry-on. And then that carry-on, it's small. It's the essentials, and that's it. You can, any other luggage that you have can't come with you on that that plane, right?
Right.
So the essentially it's just about basically saying, don't try to bring the big giant luggage bag. You know, we as women, we'll have our shoes with our pocketbook, with our, you know, our whole makeup bag, our whole hair stuff. You know, we pack it in. And really how we want to carry and travel, we want a big old giant piece of luggage. But no, you can't ascend carrying so much weight. And so our emotions literally are weight if we are not careful about how we manage them. And so we have to get our carry on. We have to get rid of the junk that's heavy and get rid of the stuff that is not beneficial to us to grow and ascend. When you are ascending, you're going higher. And that's the analogy of the plane. You can't go up with a big old weighted down plane. You can't do it. So the carry on is, you know, get your essentials. What is it that you essentially need emotionally, and let the other stuff go?
You know, you said something pretty profound, is you can't ascend carrying so much weight. And I think a lot of us carry the weight, especially Black women. We carry this weight but we don't know we're carrying the weight. We stuff it all the way down, just like your carry-on or even your luggage, period. You're stuffing, you're rolling up stuff just so you can stuff everything in there. And then sometimes it's overweight, it explodes, right? So how do you talk through some of those things or dig through some of those things and make women understand that baggage that they're carrying with them is affecting every part of their relationships?
Oh my goodness, Melissa, you have hit the nail on the head. You sometimes don't know that you have all this stuff. It's undiscovered. Right. Because we, especially as Black women, oh my gosh, we are the queens, and we are the queens of that. To push emotion down and step over it and keep going. That is not what our emotions will allow us to do. The way that we need to do that is and work through those is to learn the tools and techniques and coping skills of actually stopping and processing through our emotions and handling our business and getting rid of take the good with you and leave the bad. That's how you are essentially, it's necessary to do it.
So what are some of the steps that we can take as women to kind of deal with those things?
Yeah, absolutely, Melissa. And the way that emotions work, when you push them down and you step over them, eventually they're going to explode. They're coming up. They're not gone. They are essentially, they're going to explode in one way or the other. You're going to be triggered. You may act out over here. You may excessively drink. You may do drugs, whatever. The way that you deal with it is to deal with the emotion head on. You need to honor it. You need to honor your emotions and recognize them and process through them and put things in its proper place. We tend to not do that. And that literally, it literally hampers us getting in great relationships, whether that's platonic or romantic. It hampers our career. We can't move forward and don't understand why. All of these are things that, and if you are stuck, these are all the ways these are the reasons you have coaches, you have counselors that can help you process through these things and teach you and train you on how to do that for yourself. But the number one thing is to honor it. Honor how you feel. What am I feeling? I'm angry. Why are you angry? Honor it and say, I'm mad because I was disappointed because this happened and this was said. And now, okay, what do I want to do about that? How do I want to live my life going forward? How do I want to take that next tiny step forward and then start to do it?
I think, a big part of the emotional baggage piece that we carry, again, like I said, we don't know that we're carrying these things, but then we have all of these balls in the air that we're juggling. I've always been a single mom. I don't have time to deal with emotional baggage. I got to make sure that food is being put on the table. I got to make sure that I'm doing well at work because somebody else, I'm either being scrutinized, and I'm not saying I am, but I'm saying women feel like you're under this microscope, so you don't have time to deal with your emotions. You're trying to get up that ladder and be successful. So what do you find as a coping mechanism other than, going to counseling is obviously the first choice. But if you've listened to some of my past podcasts, we are taught that you don't air your dirty laundry. If you go to therapy, then you're crazy. So how do we get that out of the minds of women and Black women specifically?
Well, first of all, going to counseling, it is, because previously in our history, going to counseling meant we went to a white counselor who told us, different things to do that they didn't understand our culture. But now we have a lot more African American counselors that are available. So counseling, yes, should be your first choice, especially if you were kind of running into a wall and you can't figure out what's happening with your life. You need to go and talk to someone who can step outside of the situation and see it from a professional perspective and help you process through it. However, if your choice is not to go and sit with a counselor, there are ways to do this, without that process. And one of those ways is to stop, take a moment, step out of the rat race, step out of the whole entire craziness of life, step out of it for a moment and take a breath. Mm-hmm. And you do that by finding moments in the course of your day that will allow you quiet time so that you can actually process through the emotion. Mm-hmm. That I recommended doing it in the morning before you start your day, or in the evening as you end your day. Make time, make 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever. And maybe in that moment you can journal about it. You can, record it on your phone and then delete it. Process your day. Look for where you may have been bruised emotionally, where you may have been injured emotionally, where you're feeling an emotional wound. That's a process that you can start to initiate and help you to actually deal with the emotions at hand.
You have just listened to the Girl Talk podcast with your host, Melissa Ann. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or Google Play. Until next time, remember, I see you because I am you.